What's up guys, and welcome back to Pop Beat Breakdowns. In today's video we're going to be breaking down a beat that I made today of a song that also came out today. We are talking about Mimi Webb's new song Freezing. When I listened to it I thought this is a type of beat I have to do something similar to because I really enjoy this sort of music. So what I have done is created a beat similar to it, uploaded on my Type Beat channel, and I'm now going to break it down in this video. So if you're curious to know how to make a similar sounding production, then this is the video for you. If you are new to this channel by the way, or not subscribed already, smash that subscribe button right now, as it's the best way to support the channel, trying to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. And again, it's the best way to support the channel, so if we can get that 1,000 subscribers, that would be insane. But with that mandatory out of the way, let's not waste any more time, let's get into Logic and let's break down this beat. Okay, so we are now in Logic and I'm going to show you through the production in the order that I built it up, because as I always say on the channel, it's the best way to get the best understanding of how to build beats, and especially if you're a beginner producer, something that you may find the hardest to do is deciding how and which direction to take a beat and how to build it up, because it can be a bit of a daunting prospect having to try and build a beat up, let alone just getting the idea from your head onto a canvas, so to speak, canvas being Logic in this instance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through each of the elements which I've highlighted in different colours so you can see each characteristic, each section of the instrumental that's been built up to reach the desired end goal. So we're starting off with the drums today. That is what I started off as, and I've created this drum beat here which is very similar to the Mimi Webb drum beat in the song Freezing, if you've heard it already. So I'll quickly play it through to you and then I'll break them down individually. So what we've got going on here is we've got a couple of samples from Splice today. So for the kick I sampled from Splice, and this kick by itself, I wanted something that sounded very thumpy, have a lot of warmth to it, because that kind of fits into this style of pop music. I would always say it's more like the retro or 80s disco feel to it. The influence is very common nowadays, especially on artists like Dua Lipa especially. You can hear this sort of influence, and The Weeknd. So I wanted to go for a kick like that. So this is the kick I found. Just to make it a little bit more, and what I've done is I've put a very high boost on the end and a little bit of a boost in the high frequencies of the kick as well, so it's got that little bit of snap but also the thump, to put it in the most easy way to explain. Next, and then I paired that with a snare, so we've literally got a very basic snare just going on every second and fourth beat. Now I've added some reverb to this snare, so this is the snare without the reverb. You see it's really snappy reverb, which I liked about it. But in the Mimi Webb Freezing song, there is a reverb on there. So I've added the ROM reverb by Native Instruments today, where we got it a 42% mix with a 2.6% reverb, and I made it a very big, spacious reverb, so it really fills in the gaps in the production. And then I've just paired that with a clap, which when it comes to the verses, it does vary up a little bit. So we have basically the basic fundamentals of our drum beat. And that's the clap. On top of that then, I've gone to Bluebird, which is one of Logic's drum kits, and I've just used our hi-hats from here just to keep it very simple. Again, this drum beat's very simple, so I've just used them to create a simple hi-hat pattern, as you can hear here. And on top of that as well, I've added another on a separate track, because I always advise that when you're doing MIDI drums, always separate each individual element, because it makes it so much easier to mix in. And I've actually added an open hi-hat on a separate MIDI track. It gives it a nice little bit of bounce, so when you put it all together, the drums, even though they're very simple, are very bouncy. And the open hat here, the idea of that is to give a little bit of a lift to the chorus, because especially in the Freezing song, we'll call it, by Mimi, it had this very similar drum beat and the same sort of textures to it. And then lastly, I've just thrown a crash in there with a really nice big reverb. Again, I've sampled this from Splice. I've added a chorus effect on it to separate it to the sides of the mix, so it doesn't take over the mix when it hits the start of the chorus. And we've also got a reverb on as well of 4.8 seconds, a very big reverb to really sort of like tail the decay out a lot more. So this is the drum beat. So next we move on to the bass, and the bass I've used a combination of two things. First we have the Solid Soul Electric bass by Logic as well, where I created the initial drum beat. So this is the initial drum beat that bass beat I came up with. Very simple, kind of sustaining a little bit to keep the the bass frequent and present throughout the whole of the chorus. So to play in with that, I then added the 70s classic synth bass, which you can find in Alchemy. So if we come to Alchemy here, 70s classic synth bass is one of my favourite synth basses. It sounds great. You can use this on a lot of Weekend and Dua Lipa and retro synthwave type productions. It's really good for that sort of thing. So this is it. It's basically a pad. And I like that grit it has, as well as the low end presence. And to sort of amplify them characteristics, I've put a high boost on the high end, as well as really amplifying the low end of the mix, trying to leave out anything from 800 to 3K, because that's when it gets to them sort of like frequencies that I don't really like in the bass sound. But I really wanted the bass to cut through in this mix, so that's why I've EQ'd it so destructively, we could describe it like that. And you put it all together, you get this. So next now, I come to my wall of guitars, as we call it. So I've really tried to play around with guitars a lot here. There's a lot of different things going on, so I'm going to try and break it down. All of the guitars you can hear, they are Contact, and they are the Electric Vintage and the Electric Mint combination. So we've got the Electric Mint here, and we also have the Electric Vintage. I'm using both these guitars for all of the guitars you hear today. And it's basically just building up a mixture of melodic, rhythmic, muted, and more sustained legato guitars. So I'll just play you through them all individually so you can hear them, then I'll play them all together. So we started with a muted one. This one has a nice amount of reverb on it, which actually has been done in the settings here. So we've got the preset, the Spacious EDM. It sounds great. I actually use it in a lot of productions, and I've just put a chorus on just to spread it out to the sides and mix a lot more. That is something you're going to see very common because all the guitars I wanted to create some separation. So for the next guitar, I haven't actually done any separation of it. I just added the ROM reverb, so it sounds a lot better. And this is what we get. Very similar. Just something very melodic. Next then, I play around with a sample delay, because the one thing I want to do on these next two guitars was I want to create that separation, but not to have everything just feel like it's all been shoved to the side of the mix. Having some slight variations at either side of the mix makes it sound a little bit less cluttered at the side. So the next two things I added was this. And that's sample delay to the left, and then this one, which is more sample delay to the right. Now, doing this with the sample delays, again, it creates a separation, but almost like something different each side of the mix, so it doesn't sound too cluttered. It also doubles up as well, so the guitars sound even bigger at the side of the mix. It's kind of like a theoretical way of double tracking guitars. So you can see on both of them, one's delayed to the left, one's delayed more to the right. That creates biases, which means even though we're doubling the sound, there's a slight bias either side, so they're not kind of tripping over each other's feet, so to speak. So when you put this all together, this is the guitars we have so far. Then I've added that with another similar melodic sounding guitar. Not so muted, doing something very similar to this one. So it's really nice. So having this mixture of muted and the picked means we've got this really nice percussive element coming from the guitar as well. So with that all in mind, then the next thing I added on was then just some 8th strummed electric guitar, a mixture of muted and open chords, just to really add the energy. You can hear there's a chorus modulated effect on there to again push them out to the sides of the mix. So when you have all the guitars together, we've got something that's bringing a massive wall of sound but also energy to the production. There you go. So let's put out together what we have so far. This is the production with all this built so far. So now I feel like it was really time to start emphasizing on the more melodic side and having that rhythmic quality really stick through for bounce. And I was thinking the guitars, though I had all them muted and picked elements, it wasn't really sticking through enough. So now I've added 2 instruments in the MIDI section to try and enhance that a little bit more. So I added another electric vintage muted just to copy what was happening rhythmically, but try and help it to stick out more. And I put this in and paired it with the tiny pluck box, which is you can find in plucked synths in the Logic preset library. And this is what came up with. And when you put it together, you get this whole new unique sound. And that just helps add energy to the production, which means the last thing now that this production is missing is just the pads. And for today, I've stacked the dynamic soft pad from Retro Synth, the dark swell pad, then an octave up, the same dark swell pad, and a classic analog pad. All of these can be found in the Retro Synth on your Logic DAW. If you have Logic, you can use this. You go into pads. All of these presets are here. I do love these presets. The one thing I always do add to them is normally the chorus effect, just to really spread them out to the sides of the mix and have the intensity and mix on 100%, just so they're really pushed out to the sides of the mix. So when you have these, it's just a nice wall of sound. It adds that ambience and it completes the track. So now what we're going to do is we're going to play this from the start so you can hear this Mimi Webb freezing type beat. So yeah guys, that was my breakdown of my Mimi Webb type beat. If you enjoyed this video, smash that subscribe button, as it is the best way to support the channel. Other than that guys, keep making music and I will see you in the next video.